Hello everyone. Let me just open my YouTube app. If everybody can hear me and see me all right, then let me know. Let's see. Because I know sometimes people have trouble, like sometimes I have like some kind of weird glitch with the software and it just doesn't want, yeah. So let me know if you can hear me and see me. But welcome to tea time. So afternoon tea, something I look forward to all the time with you guys. Let's see. So far we got all good. Yes, we can hear you and see you, says Brian. Cool. Okay, so let me say hello to some folks. Hello Nathan, hello Moonzer, hello Steve, hello Years of Seas, which, if I'm remembering correctly, is Ryan. Hello Tyler, hello Chase's Railway Lines, hello Historic Productions, hello Moonzer, hello Daniel, hello Braden, hello Brian, hello J-Rod. Okay, so I got a question from Nathan first, which is, love these live streams, great listening content. I've been meaning to ask what your general thoughts on the upcoming Queen Anne is. Can you see it being as loved and preserved like the Queen Mary in a half century? I don't, but just to make sure, I don't like the Queen Anne ship, the one that's coming out. But my opinion on whether or not it will last like the Queen Mary is a separate opinion from that of whether or not I like the ship at all. Because I like to give an objective opinion even though I may not like the ship. But the fact that I don't like the ship aside, one of the reasons that Queen Mary was chosen for preservation wasn't at random. They didn't just look at the ship and go, all right, well, let's keep that one. It was very specific. The Queen Mary had garnered this huge reputation. Not only was she, the finest British ship on the ocean until 1967, but also the fact that she had been through World War II and had done all these amazing accomplishments. Had done all these amazing accomplishments and had transported, 800 some odd thousand troops to war, had helped win the first battle at El Alamein, had been the lead, the top lead ship, passenger ship of Operation Bolero during World War II. So, and Winston Churchill himself credited the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth with helping to win the war by a factor of a year. So, it had this huge reputation behind it and was considered this war veteran of a ship, much beloved not just by the British, but people around the world, most especially Americans, actually. So it was because of this huge love of the ship is what made them want to keep the ship. Several cities and private individuals around the world were looking to purchase the Queen Mary when she was retiring. And then the same goes for, other ships that were preserved, like the SS United States isn't necessarily preserved, but it's still around. The QE2 also had fought in the Falklands War. It garnered a reputation all on its own. So it's not just ships at random that get preserved. It's ships with a really, really fantastic reputation. And most notably is that the ones that were preserved were all ocean liners. The Queen Anne, while she may have thicker plates on the bow, is not an ocean liner. And I think that most people in society, even ocean liner fans, would still consider Queen Anne just a cruise ship. And it would be difficult for that ship to garner any kind of reputation strong enough for them to want to keep the ship for preservation in the long future. So yeah, I don't think so for that reason. But yeah. Now I wanted to ask everybody real quick before I continue on with questions. I couldn't figure out which tea. I dwindled it down to these two. So either English breakfast tea or Irish breakfast tea. Let me know what you think I should brew today. So it's either English or Irish. So let me know what you think, because I was looking at them like, okay, I need to drink these today. You know, I'm like, so it's got to be one or the other. So let me know what you think. Let's see. Well, Tyler, to be totally honest, Disney owns the distribution rights to Titanic and the Poseidon Adventure, but I don't think they actually literally own the pieces. That belongs to the production companies themselves, but the distribution rights they own. Let's see. I don't see any more questions so far. Let me just scroll down now to catch up with the current questions. Moonzer says, "Hello, Alex. I have a question. Why is there no model of the RMS Queen Elizabeth at the Queen Mary in the model area? I think they should put the QE Builders model at the Queen Mary." Well, you know, to be totally honest, it was by sheer dumb luck that they were able to even have a builder's model of the Queen Mary in that room. And then the previous operators of the ship had let that model fall into disrepair, and now it's been taken away. So now Queen Mary doesn't even have a model of Queen Mary aboard the Queen Mary. So I wouldn't really take it too personally. It's just that it depends on what museum wants to loan their models, you know, like, and, you know, the ship, maybe in the future, they'll commission a model builder to build them a model of the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth. But I mean, that's just, you know, me kind of spitballing here. But I mean, at the same time, you know, those models cost a lot of money to make. So it's nothing personal. It's just, you know, there's just, no one's given the ship a model to display. So, there might have been one in the past, but I can't answer to that. Let's see here. Hello, Eric. Hello, Kevin. Hello, Metal Rider. Daniel says, "Hey, Alex, imagine if a company made another ocean liner and called it the Normandy 2. It would be funny. There would be another rival between Queen Mary 2 and Normandy 2. Yeah, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch, I don't think, but yeah. It could happen still. Eric says, "What are you having with tea today?" Today I am having chocolate-covered McVitie's biscuits. So that's what I'm having. I normally also have my homemade Scottish shortbread with it, but I didn't make any. So I've been really busy, and my apartment is gonna be inspected sometime this week, and so I wanted it to be nice and clean. So when the inspectors come, you know, it's, you know, so I didn't want to cook anything big like that and, you know, have the kitchen a mess. Let's see. Years of Sea says, "Did you know that the Queen Elizabeth had the largest riveted hull ever?" Did she? I know that Queen Elizabeth was the largest ocean liner up until Queen Mary 2, by gross register tonnage. Because a lot of people go, oh, the SS France was larger than Queen Elizabeth. Well, not by gross register tonnage. That would have to go to the Queen Elizabeth. But for the hull, I don't know. I would have to see the measurements, like the length at the waterline and the beam of the hull, and, you know, be able to see that for myself. But yeah. Laura Jean Carlson, I know, I'm so excited. The EP Ripley is back on the mainland. I've been watching tons of videos of that. So, pretty excited about that. It's my favorite engine on the Disneyland Railroad. Alex asks, "We all know that a legendary ship is known for its story, size, speed, and interiors. Which of these do you think matters the most? You know, I would have to agree with what you say. It depends. Because, I mean, look at Titanic. It wasn't known for its speed, but yet, you know, it was known for its story and its size. And partly for its interiors. You know, but, I mean, yeah, it really just depends. I don't think there's any solid formula that's like, oh, this is what makes a ship legendary. Hello, Rayanne. Let's see, we got 2 votes so far for Irish, 2 votes for English. Mallory says, where's your Cunard poster from? I purchased it on eBay. There's a guy that prints them. So it's a copy of a copy. So, and you can actually tell because you can tell the guy who printed it for me, he added his own red border around it to increase the size of the poster, even though he couldn't increase the size of the image because it would have been pixelated. So I noticed that, and I'm kind of like, you're not fooling anyone, buddy. But anyway, yeah, I do like the poster though. It's one of my favorites because it shows both ships. So yeah, but yeah, eBay. Jeffrey says, hi Alex, can you talk about how you decided to go to Disneyland videos again? Yeah, just a second. So it's a tie between the, okay. Oh no, we got overwhelming votes for English breakfast tea. Okay, so 6-2-2. So English breakfast tea it is. So the reason why I decided to go back into doing some Disneyland videos was because essentially my Disney videos have started blowing up all of a sudden. They've been online for almost 2 years now and haven't gotten any views until now. And they're blowing up like crazy. So, I mean, I had at one point 4,000 people watching one of my videos within an hour. That is a huge amount for my channel. I think the most I've ever had was maybe 1,000 people watching at once at the same time one video. But 4,000, almost 5,000, that was a lot. And there was just all the videos blew up and I got all these subscriptions. Almost 1,000 people signed up to the channel for the Disney content. And I felt bad. I was like, well, they don't realize that I don't do Disney content anymore, you know, and they're all signing up and, you know, and so I was just kind of like thinking about it for a while. I'm like, you know, this could be yet another one of those things where, because like I said, I've done this a lot of time. I've been doing this since 2016. So I know that when I post a Disney video, it won't get any views. But then who knows, a year later it might blow up like it did right now. So I don't know. I just thought, you know, I might as well give it a try because we had 1,000 subscribers, you know, and I don't want to disappoint them. So that's kind of why I went with it. But it's certainly not going to be at the same production rate I used to do. I used to do like one Disney video a week. But I'm not going to do that this time because that's a lot of work. And I do have other subscribers that I have to appease. So there's people here for trains, ocean liners, and historical places. So I have to try to create content for them too. So, yeah, I thought I'd give it like a little shot. Try to at least try to finish putting up the videos I had to take down. So, you know, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm not 100%, like my heart is not 100% all in the idea of doing Disney videos again. Because I'm not a fan of Disneyland the way I used to be. The park is very, very different now than what it was when I was a kid, you know? And so maybe people still love going there. That's fine. That's them. I do not desire to go back necessarily. I know that when I go visit the Queen Mary later this year, hopefully, when I go visit the Queen Mary later this year, all my friends are going to want to meet up with me. All my friends like going to Disneyland. So I know they're going to want to go to Disneyland with me. And I know I'm going to have to fork over nearly $200 to get an admission ticket and go through the stress of getting a reservation for the park, fully knowing that I might have just spent that $200 and might not get in. So you might see me at Disneyland later this year, at least just once. But it is not a place I really want to go, which is weird for me to say, having been a Disney fan for 2 decades solid. But yeah, it's, but I figure I'm like, I could at least try to get the videos that were taken down back up onto the channel, so that way at least the collection is complete, or at least get close to it, So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I hope it's just not another one of those things where, like, I'm duped into doing the videos and then nobody watches them. So, all right, let's see here. Braden asks, why does the Queen Mary have a well deck, but the Queen Elizabeth doesn't? To my understanding, Queen Mary's well deck, it was designed for a purposeful use. It was designed to help, if a huge wave came up over the bow, it would be split up by that well deck and pushed to the sides of the ship and away from the ship, to help reduce the blow of that wave against the superstructure. But to my knowledge, its effect on stopping or slowing down the waves was very minimal, to the point where they just decided actually it was just more beneficial to fill in that space and have more area for passengers. So it's not that it wasn't useful at all, it's just that when weighing the option, they just would have rather had that space filled in with passenger accommodation. So that's kind of why, yeah. Marie says, do we know if the famous staterooms like the Winston Churchill are resorted and will be available as a hotel option? I don't know if when the ship reopens, if the suites like Winston Churchill's suite will be available. But I know that eventually, by the end of the year, all rooms that they had will be back into service, I think is the word I'm looking for. But when the ship opens, I know that they will have 100 rooms available. I just don't know on what deck, because all the suites are on main deck, but I don't know what deck will be available. It probably will be main deck that's available, because it's right there below Promenade, so it's easy to get to. But yeah, eventually, all the rooms, by the end of the year, all the rooms will be back up and available for booking. So, I'm hoping to get a room as well later this year when I'm able to visit the Queen Mary. So, let's see, how long do you think the RMS Oceanic 2 would have served if she didn't ground in 1914? The late 1920s, perhaps? If Oceanic had survived the war, Oceanic probably would have been around, I would say, either mid-20s or closer to the late 20s, but certainly wouldn't have survived the Great Depression, that's for sure. So, Mallory says, what got you interested in ships? It was the Queen Mary, actually. I know for a lot of people it was Titanic, but it wasn't. Titanic was not what got me into ships. For me, it was the Queen Mary. I had visited the ship last in January of 2020. I was not really a fan of the Queen Mary at the time. I knew, what it was. I'd been there a few times in my life, but didn't really care about it. But that final time being there in January of 2020, as soon as I stepped foot on board, all of a sudden just something clicked, and I was just instantly in love with the ship, and I wanted to know more and more, and I couldn't stop learning. I just wanted to keep learning everything I could about the ship, and I've been obsessed with the Queen Mary ever since. And in my research of the Queen Mary, I've stumbled across other ships, starting with Queen Elizabeth, then going into ships like Mauretania, Lusitania, but I think, though, there's also something where people think that I'm automatically interested in all ocean liners, but I'm not. I'm actually mostly, if I had to choose, it would be British liners between, the early 1900s and the late 1930s. So that would be like my little area of interest. Outside that bubble, I'm not really sure I am interested all that much in other ships. So I think for a while, you guys will be seeing a lot of videos about those British liners, as opposed to just a mix of other, ocean line companies. Okay, so water is boiled. Let's go ahead and... So for those that are new, the reason why this is called a Cunard afternoon tea is because this set of china that I have here is original china from the RMS Queen Mary and the RMS Queen Elizabeth, and the oldest piece I have is from 1952, and the newest piece I have is from 1967, and it's all authentic china. Bone china, actually. And yeah, so I have to preheat it because you never want to pour straight boiling water into it or it'll just crack. So I pour out half of the hot tap water I've put into here, and then I'm gonna top it off with some of the boiling water to help bring up the temperature slowly. And I'll let that sit for like a minute to bring that up to near boiling temperature, like probably 180 degrees, to be totally honest. Fahrenheit, that is. Let's see. Ken says, Alex, do you think when they retire the Queen Mary 2, will they use one of the Cunard cruise ships for transatlantic voyages instead of a new ocean liner? It's very likely, yeah. But the thing is that I don't see them doing it on a weekly schedule like they do with the Queen Mary 2. And the reason why is because that job actually does take an ocean liner to do it. Because, you see, I hear people all the time, they're like, oh, the difference between a cruise ship and an ocean liner is moot, because cruise ships can cross the Atlantic just like an ocean liner. But the thing is that, yeah, they can cross the Atlantic during good weather, or at least the best weather they can choose, for the year. They always try, if they need to move a cruise ship across the North Atlantic, or even any other part of the Atlantic, they will try to choose a time of year that will work best, or at least a time frame within that point of year where the weather looks like it'll be as fair as they can get. Because they do not want a ship to run through a massive hurricane force gale. That would just be a nightmare. But with the Queen Mary 2, she has a weekly scheduled crossing. So it doesn't matter if a hurricane blows through, the ship has to get to New York or to Southampton. So that's where the difference between an ocean liner and a cruise ship really matters, is that if they were doing it with a cruise ship, like the Queen Anne, for instance, they couldn't do the weekly crossing. They'd have to choose seasons of the year, or at least a very specific point in time, like in summer or something where the weather isn't so bad. So, yeah, that's kind of, yeah, that's kind of, I hope that answers your question, I think. But I have a feeling, because I mean, when you look at the Queen Mary 2, she's booked for like a year in advance. That tells me she's a popular ship. So I have a feeling that maybe when Queen Mary 2 reaches the end of her economic service life, they may choose to build another ocean liner. I don't know. It'd be nice that if they didn't stop, Steve says, largest riveted hull, I think was correct. QE would be the largest. SS France was a welded hull. I see. Okay, that I didn't know. Nathan says, Staffordshire oat cakes when you visit the UK, Alex. That sounds really good. That kind of sounds like oatmeal cookies. And I love oatmeal cookies. I don't like raisins, but I like oatmeal cookies. Sometimes raisins are in oatmeal cookies. But oat cakes, that sounds interesting. I like oats. So I will definitely try to keep that in mind. Staffordshire oat cakes. Daniel Ramirez says, I thought you said Fred Gurley was your favorite engine at the Disneyland and Santa Fe Railway. To be totally honest, and I'll be totally honest here, sometimes it changes. So I've always loved 440s, and the EP Ripley, it goes in and out of being my favorite. But the Fred Gurley, that also goes in and out of being my favorite, because I love Forney engines as well so much, and the Fred Gurley is one of the most beautiful Forney engines there is. But when EP Ripley came back and I saw all the video footage of it, it just reminded me how much I loved the EP Ripley. So, I'll be totally honest. Sometimes my favorite actually switches depending on the day. So, let's see. Here's a C. It says 118-foot beam, but the waterline length is unknown. Well, the waterline length is the same as the waterline length on Queen Mary. I used to know it. If I look it up online, I'm sure it's... I mean, not online, but I have the information with me on the computer. So I'm sure if I went to the computer, I could probably find it. But yeah. Eric says, did Queen Elizabeth run higher steam pressure than Queen Mary, being a newer design? I just assume so. It looks like Steve already answered that for me. Yeah, Steve is right. 400 PSI, which, to the best of my knowledge, actually is 50 PSI less than Queen Mary. Because I believe Queen Mary was 450 PSI. But the thing, Eric, is that I think, see, there actually is kind of this misconception out there that Queen Elizabeth was a newer ship, more economically designed, so therefore she had just as much speed or power as the Queen Mary, but it simply isn't the case. The Queen Elizabeth was designed to be more economical, yes, designed to be cheaper to operate because she consumed less fuel and all that, but it didn't make her faster. It didn't make her more powerful. I think that Queen Elizabeth, she had larger boilers, but she had less of them. So Queen Mary had 24 Yarrow boilers plus 3 Scotch marine boilers. The 3 marine boilers helped run different things like the turbo generators and also the passenger accommodations and hotel kitchens and all that kind of stuff aboard. So that way it didn't take steam away from the main engines. The main boilers to the main engines. But Queen Elizabeth had only 12 Yarrow boilers, no other boilers. And the turbo generators, you know, the hotel accommodation, steam, all that stuff was drawn from the main boilers. And so, yeah, the Queen Elizabeth, she had newer, more economic boilers, but I don't think, based off of what I know, that she could produce nearly the volume of steam that the Queen Mary was capable of for the race to win the blue ribbon. So that's one of those things I think I wanted to mention to everybody, because there is a common misconception out there about whether the Queen Elizabeth was faster than Queen Mary. But, okay, it is time to get ready to make the tea. Boy, I've already been on this live stream for half an hour. I haven't even brewed the tea yet. Jeez. Moonzer asks, where's Queen Elizabeth's builder's model? I don't know. I think actually it's in Southampton. Yeah, there is a Queen Elizabeth builder's model at the Maritime Museum in Southampton. Doc says, excited you'll cover Disney again. Any special content areas? Special? No. The special ones have already been produced. So the ones about the creation of Disneyland and also the Disneyland Railroad, those are kind of what I would consider special. The rest are just rides. So, but yeah. Mallory says, how do you retain so much knowledge about ocean liners? I struggle to remember whenever I do my research. I do too, to be totally honest. It probably looks like I'm able to just recall this stuff off the top of my head, but I mean, honestly, I struggle too. Sometimes when someone asks me a question on my live streams and I don't have the information in front of me, it's all on my computer. I struggle to remember and sometimes just forget. So... Ron says, Alex, is the Queen Mary Lego model still there? Yes, the Queen Mary Lego model is still there, and when the ship reopens, it will be one of the exhibits people can visit. Alright, let's go ahead and pour the boiling water into there. And then I'm going to pour out half of this again to just keep this hot. Did it just turn for... I'll just set a timer. Okay, let me set a timer real quick for that timer. 5 minutes. Okay. Miles High says, day at Disneyland, you might only get 2 rides with the lineups. To be totally honest, I don't see myself riding more than 2 rides anyway. During my very last visits to Disneyland, the only rides I was going on was the Disneyland Railroad and Haunted Mansion. Because the lines were so long, it was just unbelievable, and I just, I wasn't enjoying my time. So I would go there, I'd have breakfast, I'd hang out on the Disneyland Railroad for several laps, go on Haunted Mansion, then I'd walk around, just walk, maybe have some lunch or something, because I'd be there till the evening, so I'd have like a late lunch, actually it's probably more like an early dinner, to be totally honest. And then I would go home. That's kind of what I did, and... yeah, so I don't think it'll be any different. I think this time I'll probably do Disneyland Railroad, maybe Haunted Mansion, and if my friends are going on a bunch of rides, I'll try to go with them. But if they can't get on rides, then I won't be surprised. I won't be surprised, honestly. It just wasn't enjoyable towards the end. It felt like a hassle. So, and it shouldn't feel like that going to Disneyland. It shouldn't have to feel stressing to go to Disneyland. I've always said that Disney should build a third Magic Kingdom in the United States, and it should probably be Texas. So that way it could help relieve some of that overcrowding pressure from the other two parks, you know, Disneyland and Magic Kingdom in Florida. But they have no plans to build any more, you know, Magic Kingdom style parks in the United States. I don't really understand why, but Alex in the Seas of Bulgaria says, do you know which was the longest ocean liner from the 20th century? Yeah, from the 20th century, that would be the SS France. That was the longest ocean liner. JBB asks, what did I use for the base of the layout? I didn't build it. My friend Steve R, he built it for me. It is made of, what is this? Like a 1x6 lumber boards, and then the legs are made of 2x4s. So, and then the top, the table part, is I want to say it's a 1/3 inch. It's definitely not a 1/2 inch, for sure. It is like a 1/3 inch, very cheap plywood. Like, so cheap that there are, like, sections missing out of the plies. And I asked him to do that because it was not necessary to have a really strong plywood, at least not in my opinion. So I had no problem with him getting the cheap stuff. And plus, no one's going to see it, so it didn't matter to me. But yeah, that's what it's made of. And then the whole thing rolls on wheels. It's got caster wheels, which I'm thinking about replacing with larger casters because it's hard to move this thing on carpet. So I want larger casters. But yeah. Moonzer, yes, I did know that CY's University, one of its first major stops on its voyages was Long Beach. In fact, that's going into my newest video about the Queen Elizabeth. So, yeah, I have been working on a video all about the history of the RMS Queen Elizabeth, and a nice segment about what happened after it burned, and what happened to some artifacts that were recovered from the ship. Well, not recovered, but kept from the ship. I gotta choose my words carefully, because there are some ocean liner fans that will be like, well, they were not recovered. But yeah. The funny thing was this video is taking a long time to do. I wanted to have it out last Friday. And then I thought, no, I'll move it to this Friday. And then this Friday, I can't do it. So I'm thinking next Friday will be the video about RMS Queen Elizabeth. It's taking a while because I just barely finished doing the script. And it took me 2 weeks to make that script. And that was just the script alone. The research was months of research. Like, months of research, just to make sure I have my information correct, you know. And so, yeah, it was just, wow. But yeah, so the script is done. I just need to narrate it, but I need to have something out this Friday, and I wanted to record narration for a Disney video, because I can knock out Disney videos real fast. The knowledge is all in here. Like, I've known it for so long, I can just spout the knowledge about Disney parks, or at least Disneyland, that is. Not Disney parks, but Disneyland. I can just spout it with accuracy real fast. So making Disney videos is actually faster than making an ocean liner video. But there's been work on the apartment below me. My neighbors moved out, and so they've been remodeling the apartment, and so the noise is so loud I can't record my narration during the daytime. And so I'm starting to think I won't have a video out this week because I can't record the narration till late at night, and late at night is, you know, for the sake of my neighbors, I don't want to be too loud and record my narration at night. So this is what you have to think about when you make videos. Historic Production says, Alex, if they were to recover Titanic's propellers from the wreck, do you think they would preserve the propellers for museums or scrap their propellers? I don't think they would scrap them. It would cost way too much money to recover the propellers just to literally throw them in the trash. So, I mean, I guess trash is not the right word, but still, you wouldn't get back the amount of money that you invested in bringing that propeller to the surface. You're talking millions of dollars to bring that propeller to the surface. And you'll probably get, you know, several $100,000 in scrap value. They would not scrap it. They would definitely send it to museums. Loser says, Alex, how did you get the China? Oh, the China. I was thinking the country. I'm like, what? How did you get the China from QE and Queen Mary? I bought it on eBay. So, yeah, there's not much explanation behind that. I just bought it on eBay. I waited several months, buying one piece at a time, waiting for the best deals that I could find, and one by one purchased each piece. Okay. Forgot I moved my sugar bowl and creamer over here. Okay. So Justin says, Alex, your discovery of ships via the Queen Mary is perfect. She's still around, thankfully, and can teach so much to so many people. The Queen Mary is a great introduction to the maritime world. It really is, yeah. You know, my friend Shiloh, he got into ships because of the Queen Mary as well. You know, he just had been visiting the ship since he was a tiny little kid, long before he ever got interested in Titanic. So, yeah, there are people out there that get interested in ships other than from Titanic. Brayden says, wait, hold on. Nathan says, what decade would you have liked to have experienced the Queen Mary when it was in service? The 1930s, the mid-1930s, so 1936, 37, maybe 38. The reason why I say maybe is because by 38 and 39, there was just a lot of tension building up for the war. It would not have been too pleasant of voyages, I don't think. They're, especially with all the refugees on the ship, so it would have been very tense. But 36, 37, for sure. Okay, so Brayden says, are you going to get a new tea set? And if so, will you get some from the ship from White Star Line? I don't think I will be getting any White Star Line tea sets. The only other tea set I want is the Wedgwood set that they have on the Queen Mary 2. So I know that for a while they sold souvenir versions of that, and I wanted to get it. Based off of a recent video I saw, I don't think they sell it anymore. So I'm going to try to find out where I can buy it. I've tried eBay, and almost nobody sells their Wedgwood sets on eBay. So you'd be lucky if you found something for a decent price. So I'm kind of like, I really want a Wedgwood set from the Queen Mary 2 when I go. So we'll see, but I'm not interested in buying full White Star Line tea sets or anything like that. I'm actually quite happy with this one. The only reason why I want to get a newer one is because I just want to... I'm just... In the back of my mind, I'm just afraid that one day I'm going to destroy something trying to use this stuff. So I'm very careful with it, but I worry sometimes. That's good. Ron says, Alex, I read recently Queen Anne is going to cross the Atlantic in Ocean 2024. It makes sense. Miles high, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Is it a steam yacht? I know some people own steam yachts. Derpy says, with everything you've been doing for Queen Mary and its PR the last few years, they've got to give you a free room at this point. I would love if they gave me a free room. It didn't matter if I found bed bugs in my bed. I would only talk about the positive stuff that that I experience at the hotel if they gave me a free room. Because I really want to go back to the ship and film it and just, you know, experience it again from a whole different perspective, because my last time being there, you know, I fell in love with the ship, being on the ship, but I wasted so much opportunity, so much time just, I don't know, not trying to see everything. And this time around, I just want to go see everything, walk around, explore, you know, so that's something I really didn't get to do as much in the last time I went. Doc says, Alex, we rode the live steam mini trains again last week. That was so fun. I'm grateful you told me about that. Oh, you're welcome. So Alex on the seaside of Bulgaria asks, if you maintain a ship, can it last for a very long time, like 1,000 years, for example? Absolutely. As long as you keep maintaining a ship, it will last. Of course, you know, you might have to replace almost everything that was on that ship to begin with, but if you just keep fixing stuff, it'll last. So, but yeah. Evan says, "Hi, Alex. Read the Queen Mary's opening on April 1st. They want to, but I don't know if April 1st is exactly when it's going to open. So, they want to open in April. That's for sure. But they haven't stated yet April 1st because they haven't had their inspections yet. And you can't open a business, or you can't schedule a business to be open until you've had your inspections done. Wyatt Murdoch says, no home inspectors. I found out today that they might not reach my apartment till Friday. So I realized that today I had time because they weren't coming today. Moonzer says, Alex, will there be new models on the Queen Mary when people can stay and go all over the ship? As of right now, no, there won't be any new models yet, but who knows, in the future after the ship opens, they might be able to acquire one or two to put on display, but no new models now. Moonzer says, I think they should just put QE's builder's model from Southampton straight to the Queen Mary. I mean, that would be nice for people who visit the Queen Mary, but what about people who go to Southampton and are like, oh, I want to learn about the heritage of Southampton, and they go there and there's like the Queen Elizabeth model's missing, you know? Like the one major attraction of that museum is just gone. So, I don't know. I feel like, just to be fair, they should just keep it there. Oh boy. Alex and the Seaside of Bulgaria asks, last question, do you believe in ghost stories about the Queen Mary and in ghost stories in general? I don't think there are many on the ship, but I think I've experienced ghosts in my life. I hate coming into this subject because I feel like every time I talk about the Queen Mary, somebody asks me about ghosts, and it's always like the same questions. But I don't want to ignore your question, so I'll just try to answer as quickly as I can. Yes, I believe in ghosts. No, I don't believe every story I ever hear. And I've also discovered that much of the most famous ghost stories on the Queen Mary are not based in reality. They were invented by the Walt Disney Company for the Queen Mary's marketing as a haunted ship. There are people, such as Steve, who's in the comments right now, who have experienced paranormal activity aboard the Queen Mary, or at least thought they did. And so, I'm more inclined to believe stories of someone hearing someone talking or being tapped on the shoulder or seeing a door handle jiggle. I'm more inclined to believe those stories than ones of like, oh, I saw Jackie in the pool and she was swimming around and then, I don't know, she turned into a firework and exploded. I don't know. It's stuff like that. I'm just kind of like, okay, whatever, But yeah, I do believe in ghosts. No, I don't believe every story I ever hear. In fact, I'm pretty skeptical of most stories I hear. The first thing I do is I want to debunk it. I have experienced paranormal activity before, and I've tried for years to try to debunk what I saw, what I experienced, and in my mind, there was no way for me to explain it. So therefore, I know what I know is paranormal, and I know what I know is not paranormal. So if that makes any sense whatsoever. Hello, Monk. How's it going? Ocean Channel says, I am from Hong Kong, the city where the QE2, or I think you mean the QE, sank. There are many pieces in the Hong Kong Maritime Museum. Yeah. Cab Car Caden says, hey Alex, what is your favorite American steam locomotive and why? So actually we were just talking about this, like not even minutes ago, because I have a video where I talk about how the Forney engine is my favorite steam locomotive. But in this live stream, I also told somebody that my favorite is a 440. So, so I had to explain that actually my love of steam locomotives, it switches between Forneys and 440s. So depending on depending on how I feel for that day, I might say, oh, a Forney is, or I might say, oh, a 440 is. So, yeah, those would be my two top favorites. Evan Scott says, hi Alex, what do you think about the new Titanic demo? I think it is fantastic. I love it. I think they've done an amazing job, and they are still doing more projects to come, so I'm pretty happy about that. Derpy, I don't have thoughts on a theme park. I don't like theme parks. I know I talk about Disneyland, but that's the only theme park I've ever liked. I don't like theme parks. I'm not an amusement park kind of guy. A lot of people have, like, suggested to me, like, oh, you should go visit this theme park. You should visit. I'm like, I don't like theme parks. So, there's just something different about Disneyland. So, hold on. People are like grossed out about my comment about the bed bugs. Sometimes I say some pretty shocking things, I know. You know what I do, though? A lot of people don't know this about me, but I'm a little bit of a germaphobe. So, people who come to my house, they're like, oh my god, this place is spotless, because I clean my apartment like you wouldn't even believe. But when I go to hotels, it doesn't matter if I'm staying even in a fancy hotel, I will wrap myself in a cocoon of like my own clothes and stuff, so I don't have to touch the bed or the pillow. You know, I'll use my jacket like as the thing which I lay my head on the pillow. I refuse to actually put my actual face on that pillow, even if it's at a nice hotel. I've worked in hotels, and that's not to say that, you know, even the nicest hotels are gross. It's just that I've worked in hotels. I know that even the best hotels, yeah. They have really good standards, really, really, really good standards. I've worked at Hilton. They have fantastic standards, but it just doesn't meet my standards. So, Steve, oh, I'm actually going with Chris to save money. So Chris really, really wanted to have a room aboard the Queen Mary. So he and I are going to share a room. Daniel says, hey, Alex, if Queen Elizabeth had 3 funnels, would you still call it a companionship to Queen Mary? Yes, because even with 3 funnels, there was still a lot of changes made to the Queen Elizabeth, so... Aussie's here. How's your weather today, Alex? We had really weird weather today. So this morning, it was... like foggy, then kind of mid-morning, like towards 9 a.m., it was suddenly snowing like crazy, and I decided to go out for a walk because I love the snow. So I got dressed, got everything on, all that sort of stuff, went out there and went for a walk in the snow. And the snowflakes were huge. They were like cotton balls just falling from the sky. It was crazy. I actually think I did see a cotton ball sized like snow flurry, because I was like walking, and all of a sudden I see like this thing drop like 10 feet from me, and I look, and it was like a little pile of snowflakes the size of a cotton ball. So I was like, my God, that just fell from the sky. Like, so yeah, it was snowing huge snowflakes earlier. And then it stopped snowing, the sun came out, and then it started raining. Then it stopped raining, and now it's quite dry outside, but still very cloudy. It was just really weird weather, just kind of all over the place today. Let's see. Ron quoting Titanic. Ozzy says, you're almost at 40,000 subscribers. You're at 39,400. Yeah, I was pretty excited about that. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to pass 40,000. That is just absolute insanity. Because a lot of YouTubers, once they pass 40,000, there's just something that happens and their channel just explodes. So I'm kind of like, oh, that'd be great if I could hit 40,000 and all of a sudden the channel explodes, you know? Nicholas says, will they ever dry dock the Queen Mary for an intensive overhaul? It's been still seawater for over 50 years. No, see, Steve already answered it. The city of Long Beach is currently looking into the possibility of building a graving dock that the Queen Mary could use, but nothing has come about yet. Yeah, that's true. They are looking into building a graving dock. But yeah, it will take a while. It'll take a long while, because building something that large and that expensive in Southern California along the coast is like, you know, asking them to move a mountain. It is just monumental. So it'll take a while. Steve says, this is what I tell people. Do I believe she is haunted? No. Do I believe there is paranormal activity aboard Queen Mary? Yes. Paranormal activity does not necessarily mean ghosts or spirits. I'm not really sure what that means, but... Matthew says, keep up your great content, Alex. Your videos have inspired me to discuss more history on my YouTube vlog channel. Awesome work. Thank you so much, Matthew. Metal Rider says, what's going to happen to the Soviet sub next to the Queen Mary? Nobody knows yet. It's currently tied up in just litigation over who owns it, who's responsible for getting it out of there. It is not in very good shape. The city has had inspectors go look at it. They believe that if they try to move it out of there by floating it, it will likely sink. They believe that if they try to lift it out of there with cranes, it will likely break apart, and it would be disastrous. And it would cause an environmental hazard either way. So there's just a lot going on with that, and they really don't know right now what they're going to do with it or who's going to do it. So they're just working on that right now. Evan says, what's your favorite part about the Titanic demo? It would be the engine room, for sure. I love watching the engines. Chris says, hey Alex, what would you do if you were aboard my ship, RMS Britannic 2, in your own cabin? I think I would sleep. I really want to sleep. Just have a good night's sleep. And then when I woke up, I would explore the ship. Moonzer says, Alex, my grandma saw the QE2 and sailed the SS Norway. Awesome. Brian, yeah, you're right. I'm not as bad as Howard Hughes when it comes to germophobia. I'm only a slight germaphobe. I know, like, my friend Chris, last time he visited, he stayed with me, to save money so he didn't have to go to, like, a hotel or whatever. And I had an extra, like a inflatable mattress that I gave him. But after he stayed with me, like, I remember telling him, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to, like, bleach the whole apartment. And he's like, what, am I disgusting or something? I'm like, no. I'm like, that's just how I am. Like, it's nothing to do with you personally. I'm like, if anybody visits my apartment right afterwards, I clean the whole place again. So it's just, yeah. I mean, I have no problem, like, if people come here and they touch china and stuff, or they touch things, like, I have no problem with that. But afterwards, I'm going to bleach it all. So that's just how I am. Like, I don't know how that developed, but I just developed to become like that. And it becomes, I try to stop myself sometimes and just be like, you know what? A little bit of a mess is okay, but, like, I remember, like, when, like, the other day, I told my dad, I'm like, I'm having my apartment inspected sometime this week. I'm like, I need to get it clean. He goes, your apartment's already clean. I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to clean it again. And he's like, I'm sure other people have dirtier apartments, Alex. I'm like, oh, they do, for sure. I'm like, I've been told that I have got one of the cleanest apartments in this whole complex. And, I'm like, but I still feel the need to have it extra clean when they get here. It is just, yeah, that's just how I became. I need a napkin because I've got chocolate all over my hands. Hold on. Climb over all the cords and machinery. Here we go. So, Miles High says there is a YouTube series where they visit rundown motel rooms and use blacklight. You can just imagine. Yeah, I watch the Dan Bell channel. It's among among the top channels that I watch on YouTube when I do get to YouTube. And for sure, I love his series called Another Dirty Room. It's one of my favorites. And yeah, it's fantastic. I know, like, as a germaphobe, you'd think like I would hate that show. I don't hate. I think it's hilarious. I love it. So yeah, I do watch that, and that's probably the one that you were referring to as well. Let's see. Dreden says, "Do you think a ship will ever be faster than the SS United States?" There already is, actually. There already is. There was some kind of, I don't know if it was a yacht or a ferry or something. I think it was Italian, and yeah, it broke the speed record set by the SS United States. And I believe it currently has the Hales Trophy. Not the Blue Ribbon, it has the Hales Trophy. So, yeah. Yeah, so there already is ships that are faster than the SS United States, but none of them have specifically competed for the Blue Ribbon. Nicholas says, "Have you ever met Mike Brady from the YouTube channel Ocean Liner Designs?" I've never met him, no. I don't remember specifically, but I wouldn't be surprised if, like, I've left him a comment or something and he responded. I think I've, at some point or another, I think I've maybe shared a few words with every ocean liner YouTuber out there, but I don't specifically remember a specific conversation with him. But it wouldn't surprise me if he, like, emailed me and was like, actually, we did talk, you know. Like, I have really bad memory, so, yeah. NCC638 says, they could build a cofferdam around the sub and scrap it in place. Would be a challenge, though. Yeah, they could. There's a lot of things they could do. I don't think it's really... it's not really necessarily a factor of, oh, they found it impossible to do anything. It's really more like right now they're just trying to figure out who's going to pay for it, because the city doesn't want to do it. Obviously, I mean, the taxpayers, if they said, oh, by the way, taxpayers, we're going to need you to give us $6 million so we can throw this thing away. Like, the taxpayers would be like, wait, no, you need to find out who owns it first, you know, like, and make them pay for it. And any previous owners that still exist for the submarine either say, no, it's not my responsibility, and I can prove that, or they say, you know, I don't have the ability to do anything, even if I did own it, which I don't. So, you know, that's kind of what's going on right now. Chris says, Alex, with the new Titanic game, are we able to climb up in the fourth funnel of the Titanic, just like how the engineering crew could with the real funnel? Not in the game, no. Tyler says, love Dan Bell's Dead Mall series. You know, I think the Dead Mall series is for, like, certain people, but I've tried it. It's not my thing. I prefer really the show Another Dirty Room or something like that, you know. I think that's really good, but I've never quite taken to the Dead Mall series. I think I've seen a few episodes, you know, I've seen a few episodes. Some of them were interesting, but I just never, like, became a huge fanatic about it as much as I did with the other stuff. And then he did some really cool stuff too, where he would, like, visit abandoned places that were, like, haunted and stuff like that. Those were entertaining videos for sure. I think my favorite one was he visited was it a coal miner's cabin? And I was like, okay, that is scary. If you guys haven't seen it, go to the Dan Bell channel, look up like coal miner's cabin, right? And I think the thumbnail is like a guy climbing the stairs, right, of an abandoned cabin. And yeah, that is a scary video for sure. I love that one. I love that one. Okay, so let's see. See. Miles High says, Alex, I found your channel while watching the Part-Time Explorer channel, one of his ship videos. You came up as YouTube suggestion, and the rest is history. Well, that's cool. Yeah, I know some people actually find my channel through other channels, like because I'm one of my videos is suggested or something. Alex on the Seaside of Bulgaria says, actually, one more thing. In the following categories: success, beauty, speed, safety, size, and popularity. If you have the Olympic-class ships, which one do you think is the best for each one? The best for each... I don't know what you're asking. Brian says, you would think that Long Beach would have the previous owners of the submarine on record somewhere, as they would have been in contact with someone to get it to Long Beach. Yes, they do. But that's what I'm trying to say, is that there is something going on. Because it's not like they don't know. They know, but the problem is they can't prove it. So, okay, let me put it this way. You know, let's say you were one of these corporations or companies or whatever that previously owned the submarine, and you abandon it there because you don't have the money to do anything with it. And next thing you know, here comes the city knocking on your door going, pay to get rid of it. The first thing you do is be like, hey, I have proof that I do not own that thing. And next thing you know, you start dredging up all this stuff and you take it to court. That's what's going on right now. Is that it's not that they don't know who owns it. The city knows who owns it. But the thing is they can't prove it, because this person that, you know, these different organizations are coming up and they're going, well, we got stuff that says here that we're not responsible anymore. You know, so right now they're just tied up in litigation. Eventually it will be solved. A judge will say, no, this is what's what. But for now, the city does not have the authority to just force someone to take responsibility for it if they claim that they have proof that they are not responsible. So that's kind of what's going on, especially since the fact that there's also something more complex going on, which is that, so the previous owners, the city believes, is Urban Commons. Now, if you know Urban Commons, they were leasing the Queen Mary, and they were the ones that went bankrupt and had to effectively tried to sell the lease of the ship. They were not successful selling the lease, and therefore had to abandon the Queen Mary. And that's what got the Queen Mary back into Long Beach's hands. Well, the thing about Urban Commons is they no longer exist. So how do you make a company that no longer exists come back into existence to, you know, get rid of the submarine? And then furthermore, the people who were former executives of Urban Commons, they say, but that's not our submarine. The previous owner of the submarine just left it there. And the previous owner of the submarine, who, if I have my information correctly, is an elderly man in a nursing home. His company no longer exists, I don't think. So even if he was the legal owner, he is not in any capacity to do anything to the submarine. And even then, I think before he left the submarine, I'm pretty sure he had an agreement with Urban Commons for them to take ownership of it. So as you can see, it's a really messy situation. And eventually it will be resolved. It's not that nobody knows how to resolve the situation. It's really just more of, let's just wait and see who is going to be the one responsible. So, hey Matt, how's it going? Let's see. I know you said Titanic Honor and Glory is definitely going to be a game. I just don't see that happening. Do you see value in making it only a virtual tour, kind of like now, but with more spaces? I'm not sure, because what they want to do with the actual game is it will be like a virtual tour. And that's really what they mean by game. It's not going to be like, oh, here's a story. I think in the early years, they were planning for there to be a story, but they're not doing that anymore. Right now, they just want to get the main game finished. They call it a game, but it's a simulator. It's a simulator game. But yeah, they just want to get that finished and get it out so everybody can experience it. But as far as I know, the current plan is there will be no storyline, and the goal for making the finalized game sync is still on their to-do list. But when that first game releases, it may not have a syncing mode with it. So it's just going to be, 100% access to the ship in super, super high quality. Higher quality than what the demos are. So, yeah, I think that the thing is that there is value in it, but the profit margins and of that that kind of business are so low that I think that's why they've had trouble trying to get a major game company to pick up their concept and do it. Because there was like a while for a couple of years where they were trying to get a major game company to pick it up and do the work for them and just, but, or even try to get investors. They tried to get investors involved, and investors were like, look, you got like great stuff, but we just don't see it being wildly successful. So, and they probably have a point. I think they even said so in their most recent live stream. They were like, the thing is that this game will be popular amongst Titanic fans and ocean liner fans, but it will not be like hugely wildly successful amongst the population of the planet, So they know that. They're aware of that. And I think that's why it's going so slowly, is just because they're the only ones who can work on it. So, and they're doing it all, in between doing jobs and stuff. So, do I see value in it? Absolutely. But do I see it being wildly successful? No. It'll be popular among ocean liner fans. So, let's see. Doc says, I came from Offhand Disney. Oh, nice. Yeah, Offhand Disney's a nice guy. Talked to him a few times. I was going to have him cameo in one of my videos, so he might still do that. I just have to remind him, because last time I asked him to do it, he was like, oh, yeah, let's do it. And then I was kind of like, that's when I stopped doing Disney videos, so I was kind of like, well, I don't really need you anymore now. So, but yeah, he's a nice guy. Let's see. Chris says, my ship would be powered by twin nuclear reactors with combined horsepower of 66,000. My ship would probably get up to 55 or 60 knots. Wow. Sounds pretty cool. Evan Scott says, I'm going to blow up that submarine. Oh my god. Oh. Okay, that was actually pretty funny. Oh my gosh. Oh, I see. Okay, Alex of Seaside Bulgaria says, when it comes to the size, speed, and popularity and success, which of the Olympic-class ships is the best for each of these things? For example, size, Britannic. I don't know. That feels like a really long question. Like, I'd have to sit here and, like, sort and sort and sort. Like, I don't want to do that. If you can ask me a simpler question, I will answer it. But yeah, I don't want to sit here and try to, like, sort and sort all those different things amongst the 3 different ships. Billy says, hi Alex, love the channel. What do you think Disney will do with the Global Dream? Oh, that's that new ship, right? That giant eyesore that they bought. I heard that it would do really well in like the Asian market because it was built to be a Chinese cruise ship. And Chinese cruise ship, you know, like every country, the cruise passengers expect certain accommodations, certain things. And so that ship was specifically designed to serve Chinese and a few other like Asian countries and stuff like that. So I think Disney really wants to use that ship in the Asian market. I think that's what they're gonna do with the ship. They just haven't announced it yet, but like I don't know if I see that ship going to places like the Caribbean. I think like it may stay in like the Asian countries, kind of going around, you know, that kind of area. But we'll see, you know. So, Matt, yeah, I have seen the trailers and videos about the Lusitania project that they're working on. I think it looks amazing, and I hope that I get to play it soon. We'll see how. I don't know how far along they are at completing it, but hopefully it's pretty far along. I'd like to play it. So Atomi Cat says, hi Alex, tea question. Have you tried PG Tips, the English tea? It's very strong in taste. I haven't heard of it, no. PG Tips? Yeah, I'll have to look into that. Let's see here. Okay, so Alex asks, basically, which of the Olympic-class ships was the safest one? It would have to be the Britannic. I mean, it had all the safety features of Olympic plus extra. So it would have to be the Britannic. At least that's the best of my knowledge. I hope that's right. I'm pretty sure it's right. I'm pretty sure Britannic was the safest of the 3. Chris says, hey Alex, what is your favorite starship from Star Trek? I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Star Trek. I'm more of a Star Wars fan, if anything. But if I had to choose, it would have to be the original Enterprise from the 1960s. I think there's something about it that looks really cool. So, it would have to be that one. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Matt says, what's your favorite afternoon tea sandwich and cake? My favorite afternoon tea sandwich is the cucumber sandwich. Cake, I've never had a tea cake before. You know, here in the United States, we don't have much of a tea culture. I mean, you'd be lucky if you found a place that served traditional, like, just tea, you know, just like a nice tea service. You'd be lucky if you found that, because there isn't much of it. And so I've really, you know, outside of my own apartment, never experienced anything like that before. We have hot teas. Like, if you go to like a really fancy coffee shop, a lot of times they'll have different kinds of teas. I owned a cafe once. We had really fancy high-end coffees and teas, and so we kind of did that thing. I wasn't a tea fan back then, so I didn't really drink any of it. I did have, so we had this one called Pu'er, and so I had that one. That was an Indian tea. That was actually pretty good. But I wasn't much of a tea fan back then. But yeah, so, and even then, to this day, I'm really mostly only a fan of either Indian chai, like real chai, not like Starbucks chai, but like real chai, and then also English teas. So, but yeah, when it comes to like stuff to have with tea, like cakes and stuff like that, I have very little experience. I've tried to buy stuff, tried to order it. Like, I've had people who've suggested things like Tim Tams, you know, like they're from New Zealand or Australia. They suggest things like Tim Tams. I try to get that, but it's like $20 for like a small package. It's really expensive. I make my own Scottish shortbread because I was buying Walkers for a while, but that was really expensive. That was also something like $20 per package. So I always started making my own. McVitie's is pretty expensive, but at least you get a lot of biscuits out of a single package. So I can spread it out, you know. So yeah. But that's one of the things I'm looking forward to when I go to the UK, is I know, like, as often as I possibly can, as many days as I can, I want to go somewhere to have afternoon tea or high tea. I want to try, because you don't really get that experience in the United States. You just really don't. We don't have much of a tea culture to begin with. So, fun fact, because this always just blows people's minds, but people outside the U.S., I mean, this is a kettle for heating up water. Most Americans do not own one. We don't need to. So when I went to buy this, it was more expensive than probably what, you know, my UK friends or New Zealand friends or Aussie friends would normally pay, because people in the United States really don't buy these. We don't need them. So that's kind of an interesting little fun fact. But just thought I'd share that, because sometimes it just blows people's minds. Like, what? Americans don't have kettles? Like, no, we don't. We don't have electric kettles. Chris, yeah, I would love the holodeck, because then you could visit ocean liners from the past. If it was inputted into their system. It doesn't just magically conjure places. It has to be inputted into the system. Let's see. And which classic liner would most likely have afternoon tea on bedsides? That would have to be like, yeah, the Queen Mary. But I think a lot of British ships also offered that way back then. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I would think that most ships back then offered something like that. Every time I look at the clock, 5:34. It is 5:34 right now. 534 is the hull number of Queen Mary, the job number. Every time I look at the clock, it's 5:34. My God. Because I was feeling the temperature of the teapot, because I'm like, oh, I better drink this down and have the next cup. And I thought, well, what time is it? How long has it been sitting here? And I look at the clock, it's 5:34. Jeez. Nicholas says, when do you predict that you will reach the necessary funds for your trip, considering the current rate of donations? Congratulations, dedication always pays. Thank you, Nicholas. So actually, I've been putting more of my own money than I've been receiving in donations. So I think I have probably closer to $1,100 in donations towards my trip. But I think by the end of April, I would have put in $3,000 or more of my own money. So, because I'm carefully calculating all of it, I haven't fully made all the money that I could this month yet, because the month's not done. But so far, based on the trajectory, it looks like I will have half of the amount of money that I need by the end of April, just based off of current trajectory. I'm hoping that keeps going up and I can get that money as soon as possible, because it would be kind of nice to take the trip this year, maybe. I mean, I don't know if that's going to be possible. I probably should have booked last year if that was ever going to be the case. But nevertheless, the sooner I have the money, the better, because then I can book the trip far in advance and have that ready to go. So, but yeah, I'm thinking that I will have half the money available. And yeah, so that's so far $3,000 of my own money that I've saved up, and then I've gotten about $1,100 worth of donations so far, which has been really awesome. So, I'm not asking anybody to give me money, but for those people who like donating to me, who've been donating like $5 here and there, that kind of thing. Sometimes they do super chats and whatever, but if you are planning to give me a donation, consider going to my GoFundMe page to donate towards my UK trip. I like to have all that money in one neat little area, that would help me out a lot. But otherwise, yeah, I've been saving up my own money for that. So I don't want to jinx anything, but it looks like I might meet my goal of actually having all the money by fall, so I can book the trip for next year. So I really hope I didn't jinx myself there by saying that, but yeah, it's looking like it's going very well. So if I actually meet my goal, I am going to burst into tears, because I really, really have been just... Every day I think about it, like going on the Queen Mary 2, experiencing that transatlantic voyage across the ocean, getting to Southampton, seeing the different cities in the UK, and going to Paris, and then coming back on the Queen Mary 2, like, it is going to be fantastic. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience for me. So, yeah, it has been something that's been on my mind every single day. Have not given up on it whatsoever. I've always been the kind of person where, like, if I really, really, really want something, I will set my mind to it. And even if it takes me, like, a long time, I will eventually reach my goal and do what it is I want to do. And so, yeah, it looks like finally, after talking about it for, like, a whole year, it looks like things are finally in motion. So, all right, let's see here. Miles says, tea is big up here in Canada. Lots of kettles. Yeah. Matt says, kettles are $7 USD here in Australia. Would you like to be an executive chef on an ocean liner? Definitely not. I have thought about it. Would I like to be an executive chef on an ocean liner? Absolutely not. Ocean liners, boy, being a cook or a chef on a ship is very different from being a cook or a chef in a regular kitchen. I mean, it wouldn't seem like it because at first the kitchens look exactly the same, but it's the way you operate, the way you do things that is all entirely different. And I think it's more stressful. I think it's way more stressful. So, you know, it's, yeah, I definitely would not. And there have been stories, you know, on ships like the Queen Mary, the original Queen Mary, where, you know, they've hit storms and they're trying to prepare soups for dinner. And next thing you know, the pots of soups are ready to tip over and, you know, just, wow. Yeah. No, thank you. Let's see. NCC Brown Palace Hotel in Denver. I think I've heard of that hotel. Yeah. There are some beautiful hotels in Colorado. It's just absolutely amazing. T3S says, are you happy that Bruce Vaughn is back in Walt Disney Imagineering? I don't remember that name. Sorry. Ocean Channel says, have you ever heard of Matthew S. Richards? He makes videos on ships and ships in the movies. I'm working with him on a project about Love Boat. Yes, absolutely have heard of Matthew S. Richards. Been talking to him for years now. He was one of my first subscribers for watching my Oceanliner content, and it was really hilarious because I actually, around that first time, this was before I actually made my first videos about the Queen Mary, I contacted him because I mistook him for somebody else. And I was like, hey, you know, like I could really use some help with my knowledge about the Queen Mary. And he was like, surely, you know, that's great. And I'm like, we get to talking to each other, and I'm talking to him like he's like an old friend or whatever. And he's like, he sounded like really confused, like, oh, okay, I don't know you, you know, kind of sound. And I'm like, I don't think this is the person I thought. And so that's how we met. And it was actually pretty funny. It was pretty I told him, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. Like, I thought you were like this other person I met on the Queen Mary, you know, and he was like, no, it's fine, you know. So yeah, we do talk, and I watch his videos as well. So he does a really good job. Some really, really great stuff there. But yeah, great guy. Let's see here. 5:42 right now. I gotta keep an eye on the clock so I don't make this live stream too long. All right, see you later, Steve. Have fun at dinner. T3S says, will you be visiting Disneyland Paris when you go? Yes. I'm not really, like, all that desiring about going to Disneyland Paris. But the thing is that the person who's traveling with me, my friend Chris, he's the one who's going to be helping me with all his experience. He's traveled to many different countries, and he's been to Paris before. He's been to all that stuff, and the UK and all that. So he knows where to go, what to do, you know, how to save money, all that kind of stuff. I've never even left the country before, so I have no idea what it's like to travel abroad. So he's going to be there the whole time, the whole trip. And but the thing is that his YouTube channel he films, you know, Disney content. So so he was like, well, if we're going on this trip, I need to go to Disneyland Paris to film some stuff. And so I was like, all right. I'm like, you know, you don't have to twist my arm, you know. But I'm like, yeah, we'll go because, you know, he needs to do that. And I'm like, you know, it gives me a good excuse to finally see Disneyland Paris. And so, yeah, that's kind of why I'm going. But I think that if he wasn't with me, I don't know that I'd be going to Disneyland Paris, to be totally honest. But yeah, so that is part of the plan, is to visit Disneyland Paris because he has to go there to film. But otherwise, we'll be in the city of Paris doing all kinds of stuff, filming stuff for my channel and all that. So, and then of course the UK, there's lots of stuff in the UK. We'll be going to the Titanic Museum in Belfast, seeing a bunch of Titanic stuff, related stuff in the Belfast area. So everything that a tourist can do in Belfast related to Titanic will be there. So lots of neat stuff. Ocean Channel says you're going to BC Ferries. This... What? Oh, one of the oldest British Columbia ferries. The Spirit of New Westminster. Nice. That sounds cool. Thank you, Alex. I hope I achieve my goal, too. It looks like it's going to happen, so I'm pretty excited. Pigeon Play says, Mr. Alex, the SS United States will be restored. Interesting. I wonder who will do it. Miles I says, I would like to be the executive food taster on an ocean liner. That would actually be a really good job. So Alex asks, during which years did ocean liners change the most? That is really hard to say because it was almost consistently nothing but change. I don't think there was any specific years where it was like all of a sudden there was this huge shift. Because as far as I've researched, there was always constant change. Every ship that plopped into water after being constructed was an advancement over the last. So I, in all honesty, I do not think there was a time when they changed the most. I think that it was just constant change with every ship that hit the water. So, yeah. Top Impressive Line says, hello, Alex. Do you think you could do a video on the RMS Lusitania? Eventually, yes. But I can't promise any time frame. Metal Rider says, the viewing port for the propellers on the Queen Mary, does that contribute to the rust on the hull? I mean, the viewing port itself is capable of rusting because it's made of steel, but it doesn't cause the ship to rust any further, if that's what you're asking. It's not making things worse. It's not making things better either. It's just there. So I hope that answers your question. But no, it's not like it's increasing the rate of rust. And to be totally honest, the ship does have a perfectly functioning sacrificial cathodic anode system, which is part of the reason why it's experienced very little corrosion compared to the 50 years it's been sitting in that water. Is because the sacrificial cathodic anode system has been keeping it safe. The hull is in remarkably good condition. The divers have gone down there twice so far, actually. In the last 2 years, they've gone down twice. And they've checked it out, and they're just like, it's not pretty, but it is in remarkably good shape compared to what it could look like for any ship that didn't have a sacrificial system. So that is pretty good news for the Queen Mary. Matt says, what do you think would be your favorite part being on board Queen Mary 2? The afternoon tea, the captain's cocktail party. See, it's bringing a smile to my face just thinking about it. Seeing the sunsets on the ocean, talking business and politics in the men's smoking room. I don't know that I'll be in the men's smoking room. But I've seen pictures and video of it. The smoking room looks nice, but I've thought about it a lot, actually. I was just thinking about it last night too. Was like, I wonder what my favorite part will be being on the ship. But I think one of my favorite things, and I was just thinking about this last night because I was watching a video. Actually, I like watching people's vlogs of when they cross the ocean on the Queen Mary 2. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, there's this spot on the ship. Don't ask me to tell you where it is because I don't know the ship that well yet. But there's this spot on the ship where there's like a hallway that follows along these large windows that are along the hull of the ship, close-ish to the waterline. And they have all these tables where you can play cards or checkers, or you can sit there and sip tea. And I think my favorite thing will be to go there, sit in one of those chairs, and have like tea and some biscuits or some treats or whatever while looking out onto the ocean. I think that will be one of my most favorite things. And then I think another thing too is, as long as the weather permits it, I like, if I can, every day I'm going to go for several walks around the promenade deck just to get the fresh air, see the ocean. Doesn't matter how cold it is, as long as it's not a severe storm, I'll be out there. So there's that. And then, you know, of course, the afternoon teas, of course. Like, my friend Chris, like, you know, I told him, I was like, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to want to do afternoon tea every day. He's like, oh, no. He's like, I don't mind at all. He's like, I really want to do that, too. So I was like, yeah, that's definitely, we're both doing that every single day, afternoon tea. So that just looks so nice. It's kind of funny because a lot of people ask me, they go, Alex, would you ever take a cruise? And I've always said, and I still say, no. I would never take a cruise. Cruises do not fit what I want. I'm not a person who likes to party. I don't do a lot of drinking. I don't do a lot of socializing, but that might be more because I really don't have anywhere to go to socialize. But you know, I think the thing about the Queen Mary 2 is, any way I look at it, you know, there's something there that appeals to me. You know, I like the calm atmosphere. I like the idea that what people are doing there is not partying and going to the pool all the time. It's that they're sitting down, relaxing, reading something, having a sip of tea. They're just slowing down. And that's what I've always wanted. I grew up in Southern California, you know, the LA, Orange County area. I grew up with a really, really fast, like, you know, atmosphere, really fast lifestyle, always getting up and going, doing something, and, you know, cars honking and all that stuff. And ever since then, I've been trying to seek a more calm, zen atmosphere, and that's one of the reasons why I've wanted to move up here to the Portland area, where there's all this nature, all these woods and stuff, is to slow down and just enjoy just the present. And so I think being on the Queen Mary 2 is one of those things where I'm like, it's a ship, it's luxurious, but you can just relax. And so yeah, that is something I definitely want. Definitely. I think that, yeah. So those will be my favorite aspects of the ship, for sure. I'm pretty sure, yeah. So, let's see. Matt says, may I ask your age, Alex? Yes, I am almost 31. I don't like that I'm in my 30s now, but yeah, I'm almost 31. So NCC says, I pretty much have planned my trip to the UK and my voyage on the Queen Mary 2. Still worried I tried to cram too much into 2 weeks. I know what that's like. Even for this UK trip, I am kind of worried too. I'm like, I hope I can do all the things that I need to do, or at least reach the most important things. Because I know some people have told me, like, oh, Alex, when you go to the UK, you got to slow down, you got to calm down. It's what, you know. And I'm like, you know, that is wonderful, but this may be the only time I ever get to go to the UK. So I really have a lot of things I want to see, a lot of stuff I want to film, especially because the whole reason why I'm doing this trip is to film stuff for the channel. So I have to, like, get moving. And so I think the Queen Mary 2, both the voyage to the UK and the voyage back home, those will be the times when I get to just relax. But otherwise, the 2 weeks I spend in the UK and Paris, those will be like just us just rushing around, getting footage, going places, learning things. And, you know, that way when I get back home, I'll have a lot of content to make for everybody. So Pigeon says, which ship do you prefer, Lusitania or Mauretania? Mauretania for sure. Mauretania was just it's only marginal, but I think Mauretania was more beautiful than Lusitania, and also just more famous in terms of ocean-going career. Of course, Lusitania is probably more famous in the end because it sank, but still. Let's see. Pigeon Places. Also, I love your channel. You're the reason I love RMS Queen Mary. First of all, thank you so much. That is really nice of you to say. I'm always trying to get people interested into the Queen Mary. You know, it's still around. So I really want people to be more interested in the ship, and you know, if they have the ability to visit the ship, I always encourage them to do it because it's amazing. But also, what's your favorite German ship? My favorite German ship would be the... Please forgive my pronunciations. I am so bad at this stuff, but the Kronprinz Wilhelm. So, yeah, that is my favorite German ship. Ocean Channel says, do you know of any Chinese liners? I don't know any Chinese liners. I don't know any liners outside of... Well, I mean, I think really the only liners I know most about, if any, would be British liners. So the further away you get from Anglican, cultured liners, the less I know about liners. Oh, jeez. Mary Times says, I remember one time I was on the Queen Mary. I think some ghost hunters pulled the fire alarm to make it look scary. The amount of fire and police department that arrived was hilarious. Gee, I don't think that's hilarious. But yeah, that's one of the things about those ghost hunters I don't like, is a lot of them do a lot of stuff, evidence planting. And the evidence planting part about what they do disrupts so much of the ship. I think I wouldn't have such a problem with the Queen Mary marketing itself as a ghost ship if it wasn't for all those ghost hunters that go there and ruin things for everybody. So, So yeah, when people ask me, Alex, do you believe in ghosts? I'm like, yeah, I do believe in ghosts, but I do not condone at all the heavy ghost hunting marketing scheme the Queen Mary has. I do not condone all those YouTube ghost hunters that go to the ship and just trash the ship, talk trash about the ship. People that they go there, they're like, oh, let me tell you about the Queen Mary on my channel. It struck another ship in World War II, and people died all over the ship over the years, and someone was cut into tiny little pieces. It's like that's all they ever talk about. They never talk about all these fantastic, amazing stories of the ship and its valiant efforts during World War II, and just, all the Queen Mary is a ship full of, like, firsts. First this, first that, like, you name it. Bunch of firsts. Nobody ever really talks about that stuff. So it's just like, it's one of those things where it's really upsetting. It's just like, I remember I don't even have to tell my friends about this because they've all experienced it too, but going to the ship, taking the historic tours, and I'm sitting there just in awe, listening to the tour guide talking about the history of the ship. But then everyone else around me is just like bored, like, oh well. And then finally when the tour guide stops talking, he's like, does anybody have any questions? And then everybody else is like, oh, is this room haunted? Like, that's all they care about. It's all they care. They don't care about, like, the rare materials that went into this beautiful room and stuff like that. They just want to know if, like, some, like, ghost in a bed sheet has been walking around scaring people. Like, it's just so sad, It's just like... And then someone saw the wood veneers on the ship and was like, ugh, I don't like these wood veneers. It's so gross. And I'm like, these are, like, really rare, beautiful woods. Some of the most beautiful woods in the world. And a lot of them are either extinct or just near extinction to the point where you can't buy the wood anymore. You know, like, you don't see this kind of beauty in all these beautiful wood veneers and materials they used on the Queen Mary. You don't see that anymore. You know, people can't appreciate that stuff, you know? So, it's upsetting. It's really upsetting. Oh, try to reach my zen. Try to recenter. All right. Let's see. You know, I saw a video recently about Battleship Texas, where the ship is being, its new home will be in Galveston. And what's funny was, I could have sworn, I mean, I'm obviously wrong, but I thought that the ship already had an area where it was permanently moored. And then I find out that, you know, it went to dry docking, and now it's going to have to move to a different home. Not too far. I mean, right now it's in Galveston at the dry dock, but apparently where it was before was not its permanent home. I had no idea. Robert says, Alex said, is deck 2 forward. Another great spot on Queen Mary 2 is the observation decks on deck 11, right under the bridge. Do I know that area? I do. I know that area. That's another spot I really want to see. The observation deck underneath the bridge. That'll be fantastic. And then there's an observation deck above the bridge that I really want to go to as well. That would be really awesome. Top impressive line. I have thought about some kind of model boat on the layout. Unfortunately, it just won't fit. Nothing will fit. So, the river on the layout is, in scale, feet. It is only at maximum, like, 20 feet wide. That is not a lot. And there are no model boats that will fit underneath the bridges. So, not that it has to fit underneath the bridges, but that by looking at it, anybody looking at the model will know that there would be no need for a boat on the river. The river is so small, it's really more like a creek. So I think that's one of the things about the layout that's, it's really hard to tell just how small the layout is because it looks huge, and you think that all this stuff can fit, but there's really no room. I have thought about it, like, what could fit on a layout in terms of a boat? Nothing. Like, maybe a, like a rowboat, but yeah, that's about it. A rowboat, quite literally a rowboat. Nothing else will fit. So, yeah. Daniel says, what is your favorite ocean liner whistles other than Queen Mary or Queen Elizabeth? Aside from Normandy and Titanic's whistles, I haven't heard any. So I don't know. Then if I can't choose Queen Mary or Queen Elizabeth, then I can't really choose another ship's whistles. Just can't. Still had mass. Of course, it wasn't on my mass, actually. So Alex says, do you know why the ocean liners from the early and mid 20th century still had masts? Of course, it wasn't for movement, but it's actually quite interesting, and there is a long story behind all this. Yes, I do know why they have masts, and it is because they had, the masts were there to suspend the wireless antennas. So for the wireless telegraph, so they were antennas. And so ships like the Queen Mary, for instance, had her masts to spread the antennas across the ship. So the longest cables were for the long waves, and then there were other smaller cables that were attached from the masts to the funnels and stuff like that. That was for shorter waves and stuff like that. So, and then as well as the fact that, like, the forward mast on a ship also had one of the special navigation lights. I don't remember the name of the navigation light. And then, of course, also on the forward mast of these ships, they also would display signal flags. I think sometimes they displayed signal flags on the aft mast as well, but mainly forward mast. So, yeah, I actually have a video about that. So, Tyler, oh, thank you. Well, I'm glad I could keep the fire for your love of Queen Mary going. Braden says, how many decks did the Queen Elizabeth have? I would need to recount because so up until recently, if you had asked me like 2 weeks ago and said how many decks, I would have said, oh, 12, just like the Queen Mary. But I have reason to believe there was actually 13. So I've got to recheck that because I was looking at the deck plans. I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. It looks like there's 13 decks. So I have to recheck it. But I mean, it should be 12. There might be 13 only by technicality. So, Top Impressive Line says, what is your favorite French ocean liner? Favorite French ocean liner would be the SS France of 1912. SS France of 1912. That's my favorite French liner. The next one would be the SS Paris of 1910, I believe it is. As for favorite American liner, I don't have one. I don't like American liners. Let's see here. Dino DeSantis, no problem. Let's see. Pigeon Play says, also, is the Queen Mary scary when you went there? You know, when I went on the Queen Mary, and I'm going to tell you guys truthfully, when I went on the Queen Mary, no, I wasn't scared at all. I had heard the ship was haunted. In fact, the previous time I had been on the ship before that, I had been on the haunted tours. But every time I've been on the Queen Mary through my whole life, it felt like a happy ship. It never felt scary. It never felt spooky. And there's some people that are like, oh, the hallways are so spooky. I never felt like that. Like, whenever I step aboard the Queen Mary, it feels so happy. Like, there were people on the ship that loved the ship so much. And that love just emanates from the very walls and bulkheads. And you can feel it. And you walk around the ship and it just feels so loved, so happy. And that's why that's another reason why I don't like, you know, all these people that talk about, like, oh, the ghosts on the ship, because all they ever say is negative stuff. If the ship is haunted, it's haunted with a bunch of happy ghosts, okay? People who want to tap you on your shoulder, you know, with their disembodied, you know, voice and finger and all, and tell you how great the ship is. Because it is such a happy ship. So when people ask me, do you think it's haunted? I go, if it is haunted, then it's certainly not by angry ghosts, because this place is one really just such a pleasant ship to be on. So, yeah, I mean, even going down into the areas that other people might consider spooky, like the boiler rooms or the engine room or the shaft alley, like all those places didn't feel scary to me at all. Not scary a single bit. It just felt like blah, just nothing. It just felt like a room with machinery, you know. So yeah, I never once felt scared or spooked aboard the Queen Mary, and I've wandered around the Queen Mary alone as well. My last time being there with my friends, I kind of got lost because I was filming the hallways and things, and so they just kept going without me, and I was kind of wandering around looking for them. So I was by myself in these really dark areas of former third class, and yeah, but I mean, nothing spooky, nothing. The ship felt like it emanated love. So kind of like when you go to Disneyland and You know, Disneyland feels different than Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World. When you step in at Disneyland, it emanates love. You can tell that, you know, Walt Disney was there. His personal touch was all over the park. You know, and so when you go to Queen Mary, it feels like that. It feels like the place was just so beloved and so appreciated, even after all these years of neglect. So, yeah. Let's see. Scatino says, nobody died on Queen Mary. Well, that's not exactly true. People did die on the Queen Mary. But it wasn't these spectacularly horrific deaths like is advertised on the ship. People died of simple things. Cardiac arrest, you know, died of heat stroke, died of falling, you know, so stuff like that. But no murders. Nobody was murdered on the ship, so... Pigeon places. Also, is there any pieces in the Queen Mary that are historical, or did they take out all the parts? No. There is... They were too cheap to install fake stuff. So everything there that is historic is pretty much original. The ship is full of historic interiors. Tons and tons of historic interiors, all original. There are some things that have been changed out. Some floors that have been replaced. You know, things like that. But most of the ship's light fixtures, all that, all still original. So, you know, I have a video on my channel. It's a popular video, so everyone loves it. It's a virtual narrated tour of the Queen Mary. I highly suggest you watch it because I take you through the areas that I visited and talk a bit about the history and stuff of those areas and what is in those spaces that you can appreciate that is historic. So there's a lot of historic materials still left on the ship. That's why I kind of get upset when there are people who are like, oh, but they removed all her historic interiors. I'm like, that is an over-exaggeration. Most of her historic interiors are still there. They took out a lot, yes, but then those areas where they took it out didn't open back up again. So the areas that are available for you still have their historic stuff in them. There might be less of it, there might be more of it, but it's still historic. So yeah, that's kind of my take on it. Let's see. Braden says, how did the trend start that the Queen Mary is haunted? So pretty much all the way until 1989, there was hardly any stories of people claiming paranormal activity on the ship. Maybe in the 70s and early 80s, there might have been more than usual because there were some people who were just spooked about being on this big old ship. So there were some people who, you know, were like, oh, I thought I saw something or something like that. That's kind of the inkling of where it started. But then what happened was there was a company, Jack Rather Corporation, had acquired a lease for the Queen Mary. They were the first official master leaseholder of the ship that Long Beach gave out. And they at first did really well with the ship, really, really well, took such good care of it, marketed it very well. But unfortunately, the very man who owned the company or started the company, Jack Rather, who was a passenger aboard the Queen Mary back when it was in service, Jack Rather died. His wife, Benita Granville, died. So all the original people who were in charge of the company, who loved the ship, were dead. And the company kind of started failing without him there. They just kind of slowly started foundering. And they kind of let the maintenance of the ship start to slide. The popularity of the ship started to slide. The quality of the ship started going down. And then eventually Disney bought Ratherport Corporation because Ratherport Corporation owned the Disneyland Hotel. And Disney, the company, wanted to get the hotel. So when they bought Rutherford Corporation, it included acquiring the lease to the Queen Mary. When Disney took over the Queen Mary, they were kind of like, this ship isn't doing so hot anymore. They're like, we don't want to put Mickey all over it because it might drag Mickey down. So they didn't advertise the Queen Mary as a Disney property. They advertised it as a property associated with Disney, but not Disney related. And Disney at first took really good care of the ship. They had spent a lot of money trying to revamp the areas of the ship that had been neglected over the last few years. But then they started to realize that, the profit margins on the ship were small. Now, the ship did still turn a profit, but the profit margins were just really small. And Disney does not like small profit margins. They like big profit margins. And so they were kind of like, what? This ship needs a defibrillator to get it going. They thought, what will be the defibrillator? Now, I have to be really careful how I say this because I don't want to insult anybody at Disney because there were really some brilliant minds there. But I will say that there were some mistakes made. Now, a lot of the most brilliant minds were actually busy building Disney parks at the time. And so they had brought in some people. Some of them were veterans, but nevertheless, the people running the Queen Mary had decided that they thought it would be a really good idea, that the best way to jumpstart the Queen Mary again is to take some of those haunted stories that they heard and turn it into a marketing scheme for the Queen Mary. So what they did, and there's someone on my channel who is a former Imagineer who can attest to this, is the Malibu Company. He shows up once in a while. And, and he can attest to this. Disney went around the ship interviewing different employees about any possible paranormal experiences they experienced. And what Disney did was, all right, well, none of this stuff is really like box office material. So they kind of just took the ideas and rolled with it. And they just created these grand stories out of these little ideas. And they started marketing the ship as this really scary place. They even built, everyone talks about room B340. That was originally two different third-class cabins. And what Disney did was they gutted the two cabins to make it one big cabin, and then they filled it with special effects. And then part of their tour was to take people to room B340 and do this whole special effects show that made the room look really haunted. They had sink faucets in the bathroom that were motorized to turn on to make the sink activate. They had, the lights were cued to flicker and blink. They had, clothing in the closets were cued to move around. So Disney used their mastery at showmanship to turn room B340 into this haunted room. And they made up all these crazy stories, like somebody was murdered in the room, dismembered, and, somebody else was, saw like a demon or whatever. They made up all these stories. And the ship too. Oh, Jackie in the first class swimming pool. They made that up too. They made up all these stories around the ship and really pushed the ship hard as a haunted hotel. And that's where it all started. And unfortunately, the reason why the ship's never been wildly successful under that marketing scheme is simply because the idea of running a haunted house works really well on a smaller scale. It works well for anything from a tiny little western courthouse to maybe a large mansion. But the Queen Mary is 50 times larger than a mansion. And a ship of that scale, that size, is expensive to operate. And you cannot fill it day after day to the brim with paranormal people. There's just not enough paranormal people to fill it every single day and make it a successful thing. So that's been Queen Mary's downfall since the days of Disney. Unfortunately, nobody's had any better ideas since then, or at least they've never accomplished those better ideas. And so, to this day, Queen Mary is marketed as a haunted ship because just nothing better's come along to replace that idea. So, it's unfortunate. If the city had asked me, I have tons of ideas. So, Long Beach, if you're watching, I have a lot of ideas. I have an education in hotels and tourism, and I have experience working for the Disney company as a tour guide. I have a lot of ideas what you can do for Queen Mary if you're watching. So, yeah. Anywho, Alex, thank you so much. The model railway will do really well. Okay, let's see. Alex in the Seaside of Bulgaria says, which ocean liner from the 1910s would you like to sail on the most? From the 1910s? Oh boy. I mean, I can't choose Mauretania because technically that ship is from 1907, not 1910s. So I guess I would just have to say Olympic. I'd have to say Olympic, yeah. Because while I do love the SS France and while I do love the SS Paris, I don't know that I'd want to sail on them. So, yeah. I guess it would be Olympic. Yeah. Jeff Turles says, what about room B330? I don't think there's anything about that room. Years of Seas says, what is your favorite room on the Queen Mary? My favorite room on the Queen Mary that still exists would be the first class main lounge. That's my favorite room on the Queen Mary that still exists. But my favorite room on the Queen Mary that no longer exists would have been the second class overflow lounge on A deck. That used to be a beautiful space in the 1930s. Really beautiful space. I think that would have been my favorite room. Ladanian Foster says, how did they add shear to an ocean liner when it was being built? I don't really know how to answer that. I mean, it's like asking, how do you install a ramp inside of a building? Or how do you keep the levels so straight when you're building, a tower or something? Like they calculated it and they built it. I don't really know how to answer that. Alex and Seaside of Bulgaria. I do remember checking, but I don't remember what they look like off the top of my head. But I do remember checking. I'd have to check again because now I don't remember it anymore. Here's a C says, interesting, haven't seen it. Why was it removed and what is it today? So the room, the second class overflow lounge on A deck, it was removed just after the war, so after World War II, and the reason why was because, well, it probably actually existed until 1950, but just to be safe, I'll say that they removed it right after World War II. And the reason was because Cunard identified that there was really no place for teenagers to hang out on the ship, and they needed a place for teenagers. So they created what they called the Beachcombers Club. And they just took the room, revamped it to look, if you ask me, really tacky. But it looked like a teenager's beach club. The walls are painted with like sandy beaches and stuff. So in my opinion, very tacky. But yeah, but it did include some interesting stuff. Like it had a bowling alley for the kids. It had games and stuff like that. And yeah, so it was essentially a teenager's club. And they had like a little non-alcoholic bar where you could order like juice drinks and stuff like that. So, you know, for teenagers, it was interesting at the time. Yeah, and that lasted all the way through the 60s. It remained the Beachcombers Club through the 60s. And to my knowledge, the interiors continued to look like the Beachcombers Club sometime into the 70s or 80s. Steve would know, but there was a fire that broke out in the room. And some people think it was arson, but a fire broke out in the room, and they were able to get the fire under control, but it had burned the interiors. And so for a while, the room was left abandoned. And then eventually, the hotel probably was Ratherport that did it, or it could have been Disney, I'm not really sure. But one of those two companies turned the room into what it is today, which is the Capstan Lounge. And so they did not do a very good job, in my opinion. What they ended up doing was they covered the walls in like a cheap wood. Like it literally looks like the roughest plywood you've ever seen. And so the walls and the pillars are covered in this really rough plywood that has been hastily nailed together into like what's supposed to look kind of fancy. And that's what it is today. It's called the Capstan Lounge. And they call it the Capstan Lounge because they expanded out of the room into the capstan areas on both sides of the room. And so you can actually sit at tables made out of capstans. So, yeah. So that's the Capstan Lounge, but it is not beautiful today. So if you look it up and you're hoping to see something nice, it's not beautiful. It looks pretty cheap, and that's probably one of the rooms that I would hope someday could be reconverted back into what it looked like in the days of the 1930s. That was beautiful then. So. Let's see. Judy Denver says, why are those horribly ugly cruise ships parked by the gorgeous Queen Mary? Because right next door to the Queen Mary is the Carnival Cruise Terminal. Now, I don't like those ships being right next to the Queen Mary either, but the reason why I don't complain about it is because a percentage of every passenger ticket sold at that terminal goes towards the Queen Mary's maintenance budget. So they generate about $2.4 to $2.5 million a year that goes towards the Queen Mary's maintenance. So, and that amounts to half of the cost of Queen Mary's annual maintenance. Queen Mary's annual maintenance, $5 million. And so they generate half of that annual maintenance just from cruise terminal sales. So because of the fact that it helps pay for the ship's maintenance, I don't say anything because the ship needs it. The ship needs all the money it can get towards its maintenance. So, let's see. J-Rod says, do you think it was wrong to take half the Queen Mary's propellers and just leave one? Would have a better view with all the propellers. What view? How would you see it? You know, because if you tried to look at the other propeller shafts today, you could never lean over far enough. And even if you couldn't see through the water well enough to even see the propeller shaft itself. So there's no way you could see the propeller. So yeah, there's, you know, how, you know. I don't see anything wrong with them removing the propellers from the ship. They kept one, that's all that's necessary. That one that they kept when it originally, you know, was turned into an exhibit, it had an electric motor attached to it, so they could actually slowly turn and rotate the propeller. It was part of the exhibit. I hope one day they get that working again. Who knows? They did say there might be a few surprises when the ship reopens, and I'm hoping that's one of the surprises. But if we can get the propeller rotating again, it didn't go fast, it was very slow, but that'd kind of be cool. And you have an example of what the propeller looked like and it being in water. So yeah, I don't think it was necessary to keep 4 propellers and have to maintain them, you know. So but the other propellers are scattered around the property, so they're there. Chris says, my favorite rooms on the ship would be the first class dining room and the grand staircase. Also my the cabin area on the ship. Interesting. Yeah, the grand staircase is actually pretty beautiful. I've heard some people say some negative things about the grand staircase, but if it looked the way it did in the 1930s, people would change their minds. It was so beautiful. So beautiful. Alex asks, about the wave which hit the QE2 in 1995, do you think there was a chance the ship wouldn't have survived, if you ask me? I don't know enough about the QE2 to actually answer that question. This is the first time I've ever heard of that rogue wave in 1995, so I actually don't know. Alex says, would you like to sail aboard the SS Rex? I don't know. I think it's a beautiful ship, but I don't know enough about it yet to be able to say whether or not I would sail on it. So I don't know. Because for me, the beauty of a ship is not the only determining factor of whether or not I'd want to stay aboard a ship. So I'd have to know more about what it was like to be a passenger aboard that ship to be able to decide whether or not I'd want to be on it. You know, like the SS Normandy was a beautiful ship. I'll admit that. But I would not want to sail aboard the SS Normandy. It was just too posh for me, too over the top. You know, I feel like I would be sleeping in a really fancy mausoleum. I wouldn't want to do it. So, yeah. Linda says, hey, Alex, good to get you here live again. Okay, I'm curious. A couple days ago, you said you would cave in and do more Disney history. Curious what you had in mind. What prompted you to change your mind? Well, I talked about it at the beginning of the live stream, but essentially, I wasn't doing any more Disney content at first because every time I put out a Disney video, it just wasn't getting that many views, with the exception of my Disneyland Railroad video, which got mostly Railroad fans, and then my Disneyland Park history video got a lot of views because it's about the park in general. Everybody wants to know. But the individual ride videos, I stopped doing those long ago because they just weren't getting the views. No one wanted to see it generally, you know. And so it was taking up a lot of time and money. So, but the thing is that in recent days, those videos, after a year or two of being on my channel, have started blowing up with views like crazy, just blowing up. And so it's kind of like all of a sudden I have 1,000 subscribers who are here for the Disney content that they think I'm still producing. And so it's kind of like, well, now it'll be a big disappointment for them because I don't produce it. So I might as well consider at the very least, finishing the collection that I had to remove from YouTube. Because there was a collection of 35 videos that I had to remove from YouTube due to a due to a dispute I had with a music creator, and I had to take down the videos. So I've only put up less than half of the videos I had to take down. So I thought I might as well at least try to finish putting up the rest, at least. I might create a new video about the history of the Rivers of America and the Mark Twain Riverboat and all that stuff. That would be a new video. But otherwise, yeah. That's kind of how things went. Judy says, I love the Queen Mary. Always brought so much joy. I felt like the ship just loved having me there, exuding love. Yeah, exactly. The ship just feels so happy. When you go on there, you're just like, you can tell that the people who used to operate the ship, they loved it. And then there were the employees there. I've talked to so many of the employees aboard the Queen Mary. I mean, once in a while you run across somebody who's just not wanting to be there. But the most part, the employees that I spoke to aboard the Queen Mary, they loved it. They were like, dude, this is like the best place. Like, I love this ship, so everybody loves the ship, and so it's just one of the great things about it. Alex in Seaside, Bulgaria says, which is your favorite ship when not counting the ocean liners? I don't have one then. If I can't choose an ocean liner, then I'm not a ship fan. I don't have any naval ships that I like. I don't have any other. I'm not a fan of fishing ships or anything like that. So I don't have any then. Justin says, I don't necessarily like the newest cruise ships there either, but it is still good to know that the modern cruise ship world is paying for the Queen Mary's maintenance. Yeah, I agree. I like seeing the old and new side by side and that rich legacy between their eras. When Carnival Cruise Line started, they first employed former ocean liners, so there is a long legacy there too. Yeah. J. Rod says, do you like the old trains that haul lumber to the mills? Some of them are pretty cool. Not all of them. Some of them are pretty cool. Let's see. Brian says, Alex, I have the same opinion of the grand staircase on the Olympic. When they painted it green, the original wood varnish look was more appealing. Yeah, that I would have to agree with too. Alex in the Seaside of Bulgaria says, how much did your Cunard tea set cost you? Do you plan to buy another one? Do I plan to buy another one? No, it's not like I went online and was like, oh, a whole tea set, cha-ching, this was a collection. I had to slowly collect piece by piece. I was really, 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 really lucky that I was able to find the cheapest version of everything. Like people who didn't know the cost and would put it up for like $30. I'd be like, oh my God, that is, a third the price of what other people are paying. And I'd buy it. Altogether, I think altogether, the entire tea set probably is like $350 to $400. But that was with paying like a third the price other people were paying. Because I was very, very patient looking for the cheapest piece that, that was being sold. So yeah, probably around $350. Would I want another one? Definitely not. I don't need it. I definitely don't need it. I bought the whole set because I wanted to own an example of an entire Cunard tea set. And by God, I have one, so I don't need another one. And in fact, I'm looking to try to retire this one so I don't have to use it all the time. by buying a modern Cunard tea set, like the kinds that are on the Queen Mary 2. So that way, because I'm worried one day, because I'm very careful with this stuff, but I'm very worried that one day I might break something. And when you break one of these things, you can't get a new one. They don't make them anymore. You know, like, you break one, it's gone from history. So, yeah, I want to avoid breaking anything. Thankfully, I'm a very careful, cautious person when it comes to, like, you know, delicate stuff. So, Justin says she should be a National Historic Landmark and a National Monument for the War Service alone. Her long history as a passenger from her age, size, and practically unique today. And a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And that's what the Queen Mary needs to be listed as. You know, she is one of those three things. The Queen Mary, since 1995, has been listed as a National Historic Landmark. Ever since 1995. So, I was actually lucky enough to meet one of the people who got the Queen Mary that title in 1995. So that's pretty neat. But yeah, it would be neat if the Queen Mary could get awarded as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, because she really is a World Heritage Site. People from all over the world sailed aboard the ship, especially during World War II. You know, people who, you know, their last memories were on the ship before they went to war and died. So yeah, it is a really fantastic, you know, ship, lots of history, you know, and just the voyages it did around the world during the war are enough to earn it a UNESCO World Heritage Site for sure. That would be great. It might be difficult to convince the nation to make it a national monument, though. The city of Long Beach is considering that. They're considering applying for national monument status. The problem is that most Americans don't know what the Queen Mary is or why it's so important to the U.S. history. Most people look at the ship and they go, "That's some British ship. Get rid of it." Like, they don't know. They have no idea how important the ship is to American history. They think it's just British history. So it would be very difficult to get Americans behind the national monument status. But yeah. Miles High says, was there a menu for afternoon tea on Queen Mary? I haven't seen one. I haven't seen a dedicated paper menu for tea time. It's possible that what they did was they just brought out whatever the pastry chefs made that day. So, yeah. It's a nice lineup of ships, Chris. I would agree with that. Good lineup. Alex says, do you think the QE was going to be a successful museum ship if she had survived? Wait, going to be a successful museum ship if she had survived? I think yes, but not as a RMS Queen Mary, just because of all that World War stuff. Of course, the QE also served. Wait, what? You know, it's really hard to say because the QE was a museum ship. When the QE came to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, or back then, she was specifically staying at Port Everglades. But she was staying at Port Everglades, Florida, moored there as a museum ship. She was not a very successful museum ship. So we can say that she tried. There's just something about the Queen Mary that people just enjoyed more. I mean, the Queen Mary was just more famous than Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth, everybody knew that Queen Elizabeth was Queen Mary's companion liner. But Queen Mary was just the more famous of the two, you know. She's the one with all the stories. So, yeah, I don't think so, no. I think that Queen Elizabeth probably would have had a very difficult time being a successful museum ship. But then again, there is one thing that wasn't going for her, which is that when she was a museum ship, they had not done the full conversion like they did for Queen Mary. People always get angry and they're like, oh, they did so much stuff to the Queen Mary. But a lot of that stuff, if it wasn't done, the Queen Mary would not be successful today. Because with the Queen Elizabeth, they didn't even have like proper safety systems operating. One of the reasons why she had to leave Florida was because she was deemed a fire hazard, because none of her systems were converted to American systems. So they didn't even have the power on. They couldn't power on the fire suppression systems. And yeah, it was really ridiculous. They couldn't, none of the hotel rooms were open because, you know, without power, without water feeding into the ship, you can't have a working hotel. So yeah, Queen Elizabeth was not given the best opportunities. So, Metal Rider says, what did you eat with your tea? Today I had chocolate-covered McVitie's, which are tea biscuits. And Alex Bulgari says, one more thing. In which decade the which decade air travel took over ocean travel? I mean, that took like 20 to 30 years, but when was that real the most? In 1962, for the first time ever, more people took an airplane across the ocean than an ocean liner. Or was that 1960? No, it was 1962. 1962 was the first year. That was when more people flew than sailed. So, across the Atlantic. So, yeah. That is when it happened. Oh yeah, Chris, I agree. I wish that Carpathia had survived and remained as a museum ship. And Carpathia was small enough that it probably would have been possible that she was around today. You know, the smaller the ocean liner, the more likely chance of it being able to survive even to this day, because it costs less. But nevertheless, the odds are almost always against the ocean liners. So, alright folks, I'm going to end the live stream because it's been 2 hours and 45 minutes. I've answered as many questions as I possibly can. There might be a special live stream on Friday. Maybe, you know, Titanic, Honor and Glory again. Maybe Disneyland Railroad. Let me know what you guys think. But otherwise, there may not be a history video again this week, simply just because of the construction that's happening in the apartment below me. I can't record audio, so it's just making it difficult. But otherwise, next week should be some videos. I'm really hoping. My God, I'm hoping. So, yeah. Otherwise, next tea time will either be Sunday, unless it becomes like a model railroad day. Other than that, it would be next Wednesday. So, alright, folks. Thank you all for joining me, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.